But unfortunately, I'm not the expert because I've not managed till now any single case of pregnancy with COVID-19. So what I am going to talk is mainly based on the theoretical knowledge that I've gathered by going through some guidelines from ICMR, like Government of West Bengal has issued some recommendations for management of pregnancy in COVID-19 patients. RCOG Green Top Guidelines, which is updated right now from for every 3 to 5 days. The ICO guidelines regarding use of ultrasound in obstetrics uh, in the context of COVID-19 infection, and, and we also have the FOPSI guideline on management. So I think everybody knows what is COVID-19, that's coronavirus. Okay. And previously, the world has witnessed the epidemic of MERS and SARS, that is Middle East Respiratory Syndrome and severe acute respiratory syndrome. But I cannot remember any time we have faced this crisis like almost global lockdown, which is affecting our economy very much. I can't remember any time whether we have witnessed this at all anytime. The problem is with this coronavirus is that our knowledge is extremely limited. When we used to study in our second professional MBBS in microbiology textbook, there was a small paragraph on coronavirus, and we did not give any importance because we are told that it's a benign virus. But suddenly it has become very much virulent, and the problem is that this virus is mutating continuously, and at the same time, our knowledge is also updating continuously. We exactly don't know what the virus is actually, and how it is causing the harm. And moreover, the pregnant women, they represent a small number of patients who are affected with coronavirus. So even in the our knowledge is extremely limited regarding the management of pregnancy with coronavirus infection. Now I'm skipping this slide. Okay, this is basically based on the historical data or a comparison between SARS, MERS, and the coronavirus. You all know that initially it was some sporadic outbreak in Wuhan of China, but then it spread to different countries, different continents, and now it has become the global problem, the pandemic. So first of all, now what we are trying to do right now, we are advising all our pregnant women not to come to our clinic as far as practicable, and we are giving the advice through phone and WhatsApp. Although we are totally aware that few years ago, the Supreme Court of India has banned the telephonic consultation or WhatsApp consultation, and it was said that if you advise prescription without seeing the patient, it's illegal. But now, recently, the government of India has published some telemedicine guidelines, and so right now you can advise the patients over internet without seeing the patient, because right now it's not safe at all for the patients to come to us unless the benefits of examination or benefit of clinical consultation overweighs the risk of infection. So what if the patients at all need to come, I will advise to schedule the appointment, that is give the patient a particular slot of appointment. This Mrs. X should come at 9. I'll see the Mrs. X at 9. Mrs. Y should come at 9:15. I'll see the patient at Mrs. Y at 9:15. The next patient will come at 9:30, so that there will be no crowding in your clinic, and the social distancing should be maintained, and patients should be requested to bring maximum one visitor, one accompanying person for the patient. And if possible, we should check the temperature. Next thing is that we should ask about the symptoms suggestive of upper respiratory tract infections like fever, cough, running nose, respiratory distress, sneezing, etc. And I'll say this is TOCC. This mnemonics has been mentioned in the ICO guidelines, that is travel, occupation, cluster, and contact. So ask about the travel to the travel from in any areas outside the locality, travel from any other district, travel from any other state, or travel from any other countries. The occupation, because you know certain occupations put them at risk, like we healthcare workers, like police workers, and the workers who are associated with the emergency services. In the contacts, whether the patient had recent contact with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cases, or clusters. And nowadays, the government has declared certain places as hotspot. So whether the patient belongs to the place which is included in the hotspot, this should be asked. The question is, first of all, let me admit that we don't know the exact answer. Although in a few days ago, the Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, has suddenly commented that okay, pregnant women should be considered as a vulnerable group. But RCOG has then updated their guidelines. They said that there is no evidence that pregnant women are at higher risk of COVID-19 infection compared to other women. Having said that, we know that pregnancy is the condition of immunocompromised states. There is shift from Th1 immunity to Th2 immunity for protecting the baby. At the same time, Th2 immunity shift is associated with increased vulnerability to overall any viral infection. Like we know that chicken pox, influenza, these viral infections tend to be more serious in pregnancy than non-pregnant counterparts. On the other hand, the experience with SARS suggested that SARS was not more severe in pregnant women than other male or non-pregnant women. And one New York study has been published recently in the Journal of American Medical Association. They have suggested that in 86% cases, pregnant women will be showing mild symptoms. In 9% cases, they will require hospitalization, and in 5% cases, they will require ventilatory support. So, and there is no difference between pregnant women and non-pregnant counterparts. Having said that, the study you can criticize is because it included only small number of women. On the other hand, another study which have raised much hue and cry regarding testing in pregnancy that included 251 women, and they found that out of them, this 251 pregnant women, 33 were affected with coronavirus. Out of these 33, only 4 were symptomatic and 29 were asymptomatic. So they concluded that almost one in 15 women, the 15% of women who are affected with coronavirus infection, they may actually be asymptomatic. So they recommended the routine testing in pregnant women who are presenting to emergency or particularly who are in labor. But unfortunately, we cannot do this because we have some government guidelines which is restricting the use of and we don't have much kits available for testing. So government is restricting the use of the testing to certain number of kits. The government, the ICMR has defined their criteria whom to test. The problem with this viral infection is that in pregnancy, hypoxia tends to become more severe because the pregnant women have very marginal balance of acid-base balance, and at the same time, the pulmonary reserve is compromised as a physiological change in pregnancy, so they are more prone to hypoxia. Secondly, particularly when these women are in isolation and quarantine, the mobility is restricted, and we know pregnancy is a thrombogenic state, so there is increased chance of venous thromboembolism. And please don't underestimate the mental well-being of these patients who are advised quarantine or isolation, because you know that there are a number of mental problems that depression and anxiety can happen in pregnancy, and isolation and quarantine can increase this problem. Now, next is regarding the fetal issue, whether the coronavirus can infect the fetus. We know that SARS was not associated with congenital anomaly, and till now there is no evidence of congenital anomaly even in the women who have been affected with the coronavirus. Although we cannot confirm this finding because our knowledge is extremely limited, we have the studies have included only very few number of women. Although the SARS and MERS, they were not associated with increased risk of congenital infection. So if we can extrapolate, we say that there is minimally increased risk of congenital infection. In some studies, they have shown that in China, there is increased chance of premature delivery, although it's not sure whether it's actually because of preterm labor, that may be because of systemic inflammatory response associated with viral infection. or it was iatrogenic preterm delivery because the maternal condition was worsening. So that's why it mandated preterm delivery. We don't know. But we know that if there is associated fever from any cause, any systemic cause, if there is a raised temperature in early pregnancy, it may lead to increased chance of congenital anomaly. And in late pregnancy, there is increased risk of intrauterine fetal death and preterm labor associated with fever. So by any means, fever should be controlled. Next issue is the vertical transmission, most debatable issue. In China, they have studied some women after delivery they have, who are COVID positive, and they had tested the placenta amniotic fluid and cord for the virus, and they did not find any evidence of presence of virus in this specimen. So they concluded that there is no increased risk of congenital vertical transmission. However, there are two case reports in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, recently, which have found that women who are affected with this coronavirus, their babies are showing high titer of IgM antibody against coronavirus, although the nasopharyngeal swab was negative. So you know that IgM is not transferred to placenta. So IgM is present. That means the baby were probably affected through the viral transmission, although we don't have adequate knowledge, so the evidence is extremely lacking. Now, fetal growth restriction. If the woman recovers from the coronavirus infection, we know that SARS virus infection evidence suggested that there was increased risk associated with fetal growth restriction or IUGR. So the ISOC suggested that if you find a woman who has recovered from coronavirus infection, you should offer serial growth scan. And again, one Chinese study that included 18 women, which and one woman had twins, so 19 babies they included. Out of them, they found that 8 babies were affected with fetal growth restriction. Now, the antenatal management. You know that sometimes these women are getting tense that okay, I should visit the doctor in pregnancy for my fetal well-being. Okay, what should I do? So first thing is that we have to reassure. We have to consult them over telephone or WhatsApp that okay, if there is no problem, if there is no situation that mandates emergency consultation, please stay at home. Now regarding the further investigations. Blood and urine test, which we commonly do as a part of antenatal test, you know, this can be deferred, or if possible, there are some labs which are going to the home for home blood collection that can be done, but provided that the safety measure is there, the person who is collecting the blood is following all the safety measures. Now, regarding the scan, early pregnancy scan, that is the dating scan, can be deferred till 11 to 30 weeks. If possible, you can do the combined test or the first trimester screening, but the belongs to patient belongs to high risk group like very increased age or previous baby Down syndrome. In that case, you have to do the combined test with taking all the necessary precautions. Now, second is the anomaly scan. You can defer by 2 to 3 weeks, particularly in low risk women. However, in high risk women, like women with diabetes, women with epilepsy, or women with previous babies affected with some congenital anomalies, in that case, you probably cannot defer the test. But in these cases, if the woman is affected with COVID-19, either you do the bedside test, that is avoid asking the mother to come to your clinic. Although theoretically it is said that you should have some isolation chamber in your clinic where you should have dedicated ultrasound machine and staff, all these things, and with all the precautions. But I don't think that we have that resource that we can afford this. better to avoid asking the woman to come to your clinic, or you can do bedside testing at the bedside ultrasound, taking all the necessary precautions, including N95 mask and the PPE. The growth scan in low risk group, growth scan should be avoided as of now. In high risk group, like women with preeclampsia or a confirmed case of IUGR, or women with other risk factors like autoimmune disease, the previous diabetes, in that case, you can do growth scan, but try to reduce the frequency. If one growth scan is fine at 28 weeks, you can defer the further growth scan at 34 to 36 weeks. Next is sometimes we are advising cervical length screening for women who had previous preterm delivery. Theoretically, and according to guideline, we should advise cervical length screening from 14 weeks for every 2 to 3 weeks till 26 to 28 weeks. However, in the context of current pandemic, one cervical length screening at 16 weeks should be done, another at 18 to 20 weeks at the time of anomaly scan. If you find that the cervical length is stable, you should not offer any further cervical length screening, or rather offer progesterone. Vaginal progesterone is better in this case. On the other hand, if the woman is found to be COVID-19 positive, don't offer cervical length screening, because TVS should be avoided as far as practicable, because we don't know whether the virus is actually shed in the vaginal fluid. Our knowledge is extremely limited. In that case, you can offer the vaginal progesterone. Similarly, fetal echocardiography, if possible, you whenever indicated, you can combine with the time of anomaly scan if the personnel is available at that day, or otherwise in low risk cases like women with family history of congenital heart disease, women who conceived after ART or multiple pregnancy. In that case, fetal echocardiography can be deferred by 4 weeks. In high risk cases like diabetes or epilepsy or nuchal thickness more than 3.5, in that cases you can defer by maximum 1 to 2 weeks. However, in very high risk, you have to do it. But please remember about the condition, the medical legal condition, because if some congenital anomaly or some chromosomal anomaly is detected, the legal age of MTP is 20 weeks, although there are some conditions where it can be extended to 24 weeks. But it's likely that in current scenario, there may be some relaxation, although we cannot say it officially, but probably we may get some relaxation in case we detect some congenital anomaly, lethal anomaly that needs termination. The next issue is about invasive procedure, chorionic villus sampling or amniocentesis. We know that there are some viruses like HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and even cytomegaloviruses that can be transmitted in the fetus by needle that you insert during invasive procedure. However, we don't have any knowledge about this, about the transmission of COVID-19 by this route. If possible, avoid it. In low risk group, you can advise NIPT. Otherwise, when you have to do it, try take all the necessary precautions and explain the woman that the transmission of, particularly if the woman is COVID-19 positive, we cannot exclude the possibility of viral transmission in the baby by this procedure, of course in reassuring voice, but it can happen. And next thing I've discussed, of course, if the woman has recovered from the COVID-19 infection, the growth scan should be offered at least 2 to 4 weeks after the recovery. So we should always trace by phone, by WhatsApp, or whenever the patient visits to our clinic, the necessary healthy steps at home. Should stay at home, avoid going out as far as practicable, washing hands frequently with alcohol-based hand rub. Otherwise, the soap. If somebody nowadays, we know that there is some paucity of the hand sanitizer, so we all have access to soap. So soap is the best type of hand sanitizer. It should be used. Respiratory etiquette, the cough etiquette should be used. How to take measures when you are coughing or sneezing. Avoid unnecessary touching of face, eyes, and nose. That should be explained. And the spacing, the social distancing, at least 1 meter distance from each other, that should be explained. Now, the universal testing in pregnant women is not recommended by ICMR. Although, as I have mentioned, that NEJM study, they are recommending that all the pregnant women in labor should be tested. But now we know that even the ICMR guidelines is also updating regularly. So what was published yesterday may not be valid on the day after tomorrow. Still nowadays we are advising, and it's not different from other non-pregnant counterparts. That is, a pregnant woman who is having symptoms and who had recent history of travel in last 14 days, or who have recent close contact with laboratory proven COVID-19 positive patient, or symptomatic pregnant woman who is healthcare worker, that is doctor, nurse, or laboratory technician, or who is hospitalized with severe acute respiratory illness, that is SARI, even when there is no history of travel or contact. And secondly, in high-risk contact group, particularly in the cluster areas or hotspot, a pregnant woman who is asymptomatic, in that case, you should test the woman between 5 to 14 days of coming in contact as per the Government of India guide. Now we know that there are number of test methods and newer methods are emerging, but essentially we have basically two types of tests. One is the antigen, that is the nucleic acid dependent test, that is RT-PCR, which is detecting the viral gene, that is reverse transcriptase PCR. It's taken from the nasopharyngeal swab, and nasopharyngeal swab again it requires expertise because everybody is not expert in collecting the nasopharyngeal swab, and the person who is taking the nasopharyngeal swab should take all the necessary precautions. Otherwise, there is chance that that person will be infected. A sputum should not be tested. The problem with nasopharyngeal swab RT-PCR is that it should be repeated because there is 30% chance of false negative rate. Because if there is early stage of infection, virus is not adequately multiplying. In that case, you may get negative infection. On the other hand, you have blood test based on antibody test, with which you can detect the early infection, the IgM by detecting the IgM, but you know that antibody response takes some time. So in early case, it may be negative. Although in rapid screening, like in screening of asymptomatic individuals, antibody testing has definitely some advantages. Now, the woman is pregnant. That does not mean that you can withhold other investigations like X-ray or CT scan. Please remember, if you do the abdominal shielding, the fetal exposure, the fetal radiation exposure to the fetus by chest X-ray or CT scan is minimum, and it's much below than the threshold level that can cause the fetal congenital anomaly in early pregnancy, or fetal neurological defect or brain tumor in late pregnancy. So for all practical purposes, no radiological investigation should be withheld, because these are very important parts in managing a pneumonia patient. And in blood, please take care of the blood investigation. If you see the leukocytosis and neutrophilia, probably you are dealing with bacterial pneumonia. On the other hand, if in the blood you see the lymphopenia is characteristic of the viral infection. And again, please remember, a pregnant woman who has presented with respiratory illness, of course, you should keep the COVID-19 infection in mind. We should exclude the possibility of COVID-19. At the same time, we should not ignore the other possibilities of respiratory distress in a pregnant woman, particularly pulmonary thromboembolism, preeclampsia and pulmonary edema, and heart failure. And at the same time, there are some women who are suffering from physiological dyspnea, and panic attacks should also be kept in mind. Now, quarantine and isolation, we all know isolation is for the women who are who have been tested positive with COVID-19, and quarantine is for the women who has come in contact with the COVID-19 cases, that is, who have not yet been tested, but who should be kept in separate from other individuals, so that in case they are carrying the infection, they cannot transmit the infection to the others. If the woman is in quarantine, ask the woman how to keep herself and her fetus well. And fetal count, the fetal movement should be monitored. Mental well-being should not be ignored, and the personal hygiene should be maintained as far as possible. If in the same room there is another individual, the social distancing should be maintained. And the women should use separate utensils, the separate clothes, and the clothes should be washed separately as far as possible, and the restrict and should restrict the movement within the house. And again, the same thing, the general health measures should be taken, the surgical mask and should be changed every 6 to 8 hours, and correct disposal, the hand washing, disposable gloves should be used as far as possible, and the visitors should be, number of visitors should be minimum. I think we have already mentioned about the COVID-19 infection in pregnant women. There is no evidence that the infection tends to be more severe in pregnant women, unlike infections like chickenpox, which tends to be more severe in pregnant women than non-pregnant individuals. However, if the woman is suspecting COVID-19 infection, we should follow the government protocol and we should refer the woman to COVID-19 hospital where all the facilities, including the delivery, should be there. Risk of fecal transmission, I've already discussed, I think. And the evaluation should be done only in cases where the fetus is born from the mother who is COVID-19 positive, who became COVID-19 positive within 14 days of delivery, or the neonate who has come in contact with the other individual who is positive with COVID-19. Otherwise, routine neonatal testing is not justified. Now, amidst the outbreak of COVID-19 infection, some people are criticizing our medical community that our routine healthcare services are often compromised. MTP, medical termination of a pregnancy, we sometimes feel that it's not the medical emergency, so we sometimes we have the tendency to refuse these patients. But please remember, early pregnancy termination is always safe than late pregnancy termination. And the dangerous part is that if we refuse the medical termination, these women won't have any other options, but they have to go to the CUA for unsafe abortion. So we can take this termination, but taking all the necessary precautions, particularly if you are doing a surgical termination under general anesthesia. The anesthetist, particularly because general anesthesia, it's an aerosol generating procedure. So particularly the anesthetist should take all the necessary precautions. Medical abortion you can do, but at the same time, keep in mind that emergency situation can happen at any time. The woman may bleed in the midnight. In that case, you have to discuss whether the woman will be able to come to your emergency in that case. Now, this is SOG algorithm, although it varies from country to country. Basically, you have to assess the patient symptoms when some unbooked case in particular is arriving at your emergency. Assess for symptoms. If there are symptoms, if there is no symptoms, you can give routine antenatal care. If there are symptoms, ask for the TOCC, that is the travel, occupation, contact, and cluster. If you find the positive answer, then the woman is at moderate risk. On the other hand, if the answers are negative, then assess for other risk factors like HIV, chronic heart disease, immunocompromised, autoimmune disease, liver disease, lung disease, or sickle cell disease, or patient is taking immunosuppressant therapy. Please remember, these pregnant women who are HIV positive or who are taking the immunosuppressant therapy or who are diabetic, they are at increased risk of catching the coronavirus infection, and the infection can be more severe in that case. So in that case, they need separate isolation and testing. On the other hand, if you exclude all the possibilities, that is no history of symptoms, no history of travel, occupation, contact or cluster, no history of high risk cases, in that case, you can give routine antenatal care. Otherwise, you have to test, and until the test results are coming, assume that they are positive. Once the test result has come and it's negative, you can provide routine antenatal care. Otherwise, if the test result is positive, in that case, ideally, they should be treated in the COVID-19 hospital, provided that there is no medical or obstetric emergency, that is, patient can be transferred safely, and there is no obstetric emergency. So these are the things. If the pregnant woman who is not in labor, who are presenting with these features like respiratory distress and other symptoms, basically you have to assess this respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, the partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. And there is another score, although it's not for us because it's mainly for the critical care staff, that is the SOFA score, sequential organ failure assessment score. I'm skipping this slide because we gynecologists are not very much conversant with these things. Medical management, regarding medical management, please remember hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, azithromycin, all are safe. But if we are administering hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin together, if possible, we should do an ECG and retinal screening, particularly in women who are having pre-existing heart disease, because erythromycin and the hydroxychloroquine can sometimes cause prolonged QT interval. And there is no data on congenital anomaly associated with hydroxychloroquine, because hydroxychloroquine has been used for long years in SLE and other type of autoimmune diseases in pregnancy. And we know that chloroquine has been used as prophylaxis and treatment in pregnancy, so they are absolutely safe. I'm not going into details of the doses of this hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. Regarding the antivirals, although the efficacy is questionable till now, because we are seeing some conflicting results about hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and this antiviral in different studies. Lopinavir, ritonavir have been used in pregnant women who are HIV positive, and also in hepatitis B positive pregnant women. So they are absolutely safe. There is no evidence of that they increase the risk of congenital anomaly. Remdesivir, I don't know whether it's available in India, although we don't have any data on pregnant women, but we have to think about the risk-benefit ratio. We have to think whether the risk of congenital anomaly is higher with this unknown, that drug which has not been tested, or the benefit of giving this drug is better, higher. So you have to risk the risk-benefit ratio. NSAID should be avoided. We know in pregnancy after 32 weeks, NSAID should be avoided because it can lead to premature ductal arteriosus closure. Even the aspirin and other drugs should be avoided as far as possible, because theoretically they can interact with the angiotensin receptor. Antenatal steroids for fetal lung maturity, there is no contraindication. Even the woman who is having clinical manifestation of COVID-19 infection, other antibiotics can be given, oxygen is safe. Intensive care management, I'm not going into details, but it should not be different from other non-pregnant individuals, apart from the fact that the interpretation of some ABG and other respiratory functions may need some expertise, because in pregnancy, because of physiological reasons, there may be lowering of the carbon dioxide tension. So this report should be interpreted cautiously. Labor. There is no indication of preterm delivery. There is no indication of cesarean section or induction of labor. If the woman is stable, the obstetric management should be given, the cesarean section or induction labor should be done based on the other obstetric indication. However, if the woman is critically ill, in that case, delivering the baby may improve her cardiorespiratory function. So that should be discussed in the multidisciplinary team. Although in labor, if you are doing the normal delivery, the CTG monitoring should be done, because there is increased risk of fetal distress, particularly in COVID-19 positive pneumonia patients. Theoretically, there is no indication of cesarean section, but sometimes these women they are becoming very afraid, and they are requesting some premature cesarean section. In that case, you have to discuss the risk and benefit, whether the woman will be able to come to the hospital in case of emergency, and the risk of premature delivery by cesarean section. All that this risk and benefit should be discussed. So the decision should be individualized. Timing of delivery, I think I have discussed. Monitoring, the fetal monitoring should be done by CTG, and the maternal monitoring, the vitals, particularly the oxygen saturation, should be done. Intravenous fluid overloading should be avoided as far as possible. Route of delivery, I've already said. Labor analgesia and anesthesia, in our country, probably we are not very much conversant with Entonox, that is nitrous oxide and gas. In the European countries, just suggesting that you should use the microbiological filter with Entonox, because initial studies have suggested that through Entonox the virus may be transmitted, but there is no evidence. Even the RCOG guidelines have stated that Entonox can be safely used. And whenever possible in cesarean section or pain management, regional anesthesia, that is epidural or spinal, are better. General anesthesia for cesarean section should be avoided as far as possible, because it's an aerosol generating procedure. if you are doing the delivery, it's needless to mention that you should take all the necessary precaution, including the PPE. Should restrict the number of individuals caring for the women, the number of nurses, the scavengers and the doctors. There should be minimal staff involvement should be there. So this is the flow chart. Basically, where you have to assess whether the patient requires an obstetric emergency, whether she requires emergency delivery or not, or whether she requires emergency hospital management or not. Based on this, you can individualize the woman. Testing of neonates, I've said, if the symptomatic, the baby should be tested as far as possible. If asymptomatic, but the baby have been delivered from a mother who has been COVID-19 positive within 14 days of delivery, or the symptomatic neonates who have come in contact with the COVID-19 positive individual, these neonates should be tested. Nasopharyngeal swab again is the standard in this. Breastfeeding should not be discouraged. We should not underestimate the benefits of breastfeeding. But even in patients who are COVID-19 positive, in these women, we should advise before breastfeeding, during the time of breastfeeding, the mask should be put, hands should be washed clearly, the surface should be clean. But if possible, express breastfeeding can be done by individual who is healthy and who is taking all the necessary precautions, and that individual can feed the baby separately. Postnatal care is just like other standard postnatal care in other women, standard postnatal care, COVID-19 positive women, but we should take extreme precaution in the disposal of the waste, particularly the biomedical waste management. And all the maternity units should have this this policy. We should restrict the number of visitors in the hospital. And please take care of the postpartum depression, postpartum blue, and postpartum psychosis in these women who was in isolation, who was COVID-19 positive, and who was delivered. This is the FOXI guidelines. It's very simplified way. They have mentioned that all elective surgeries should be avoided, gynecological procedures. ART, we have stopped doing ART, the IVF, IUI, all the things. And even any woman comes for consultation or emergency basis, medical and paramedical staff should take all the necessary precautions, and we should ask every individual about the travel history and the symptoms or the risk of respiratory tract infection. This is the ICO guidelines that I mentioned about the deferring the combined test and growth scan whenever indicated. And this is from the ICO guidelines regarding whether you should take precaution and what type of precaution you take while dealing with asymptomatic individual who is TOCC negative. That is, there is no positive history of travel, occupation, cluster, and contact. Asymptomatic individuals but who are TOCC positive, and suspected or confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection. The hand hygiene should be followed in every case. Face mask should be used, but respirator should be used when you are dealing with confirmed or suspected cases. Isolation gown is a must, the disposable gown, preferably PPE in suspected cases. Disposable gloves should be used, and if you are dealing with COVID-19 positive suspected or confirmed case, you should use 2 pairs of gloves. Eye protection should be used, goggles or face shield if you are dealing with suspected or confirmed cases. Hair care also should be used at the same time. The standard TVS should be avoided as far as possible, but when it cannot be avoided, additional consideration should be given for this proper disposal of the condom cover or the commercial transducer cover when we are doing the TVS. And the number of staff in the room should be kept clean. That's all. Thank you very much. Okay. So that's all what I have understood from reading the guidelines and the slides they have sent by the Alembic. But practically, I don't have any idea about management of COVID-19 cases because I am not managed any single case. So I just try to convey what is there in the theoretical. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you. Just we can now take the questions from participants. I request you to just off your screen, Manish. Please don't share your screen now. And you take
sharing, right?
Yeah.
I've stopped sharing.
Okay, 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 sir. Sir, now you can take questions from participants.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm requesting all the participants please unmute and then you can ask question to Dr. Sujoy.
I'm Dr. Shashi Dindal. I wanted to ask about the prophylactic use of hydroxychloroquine in pregnant patients.
It's very controversial topic because we know that we are getting some conflicting evidences. We don't have any data about pregnant women, but overall in general population, some people are suggesting that hydroxychloroquine should be used in all individuals. Some are suggesting that it should be used only in high risk cases like who are coming in contact with COVID-19 positive cases, who are residing in the high risk areas, in the hotspot, or the healthcare workers taking care of these individuals. So I think if the pregnant woman is, if anyone is pregnant, she's residing in the high risk area, she's taking care, she's a doctor or healthcare worker, or she has come in contact with the COVID-19 suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19,
And
because
only we should do.
then only we can do. But there is no evidence of any congenital anomaly. It's absolutely safe drug because in SLE patients who are pregnant, they are using it. So it's absolutely safe. But question is whether it will be effective or not. It usually don't have much side effects, but we should take caution if possible, although we don't know whether we will be able to do it in this scenario. Ideally, the retinal checkup and the ECG monitoring should be done before starting the hydroxychloroquine. But again, it's theoretical. In the pandemic, I don't know whether we'll get any ophthalmologist doing the retinal checkup or any technician for doing the ECG right now.
While delivering a patient who is not having any history of contact and not having any travel history, more or less normal, should we still use PPE kit while delivering the patient, or
There is no recommendations that you should use PPE kit. Moreover, the PPE kit is difficult to access right now. Okay, but there is no, and nobody is suggesting that if there is asymptomatic, there is no travel history, there is no high risk factors, there is no history of contact, we should do the standard universal precaution. There is no need of using PPE.
okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would request participants, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions to Dr. Sujoy. If any questions, queries are there, you can ask Dr. Sujoy Dasgupta. You can unmute yourself.
I think he was very good in expressing all the doubts without even we ask him. So thanks to you, Sujay.
Thank you. But basically, what I've done is I've basically just marked up from all the guidelines and the slides. I've just conveyed it.
We
Basically,
need to know these things.
yeah.
This is the
Basically,
time.
we don't have any first-hand experience in managing the COVID cases. Just what I have gathered from the guidelines and other things. Just I have just conveyed those things.
So the gist of the matter is that we treat them normally like normal antenatal patients, except that we just reduce the antenatal visits,
Yes.
and if any other associated symptoms, then we just take care of.
Exactly. As far as possible, we should try to reduce the number of antenatal visits because sometimes women are getting afraid that they are not able to come to us. So what will happen? So before coming, we should make them sure. They have to make it very sure that they are having emergency. Only in that case they have to come, or there is some problem for which they need face-to-face consultation. And even when they come, we should try to avoid clinical examination unless it's absolutely necessary.
But getting the fetal heart by Doppler after disinfecting the Doppler should not be a problem.
I think it should not be a problem, but we should disinfect we should take all the measures like mask, the using the gloves, and later on we should disinfect the Doppler, seeing the manufacturer's guidelines. We can do it.
I think above everything, the psychology of the patient is very important. They are having a unknown fear. My patients are coming and asking me, what will happen now if I deliver during this time? What will happen? The fear psychosis is taking a
Exactly,
big...
exactly. Even sometimes the women are having the breathlessness is just because of panic attack. They are having breathlessness, palpitation, all these things, just simply because of panic. And often they are say these afraid that
From my side, I would like that stress upon deep breathing,
exactly,
giving mental relaxation as well. It will increase lung and
exactly.
Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Hello, আমি Dr. Nandini Chakraborty.
And Nandini Nibun.
I want to tell you if Foxy can present certain guidelines for making PPE mandatory before undertaking any surgery whatsoever.
Yeah, ideally it should be done because nowadays we are seeing the number of patients, asymptomatic patients who are.
If we can keep that in mind and pre-operative workup, if we can include that along with HIV, hepatitis B, and HCV screening, ideally COVID should be included and PPE should be a must in all surgeries.
Exactly. I completely agree.
That Foxy can help us and endorse it.
Yeah, problem is that the government is very much strict regarding the testing criteria. They will not allow till now. You know that there are some red tapeism and they are not allowing testing everybody. Even you suspect somebody because of respiratory infection, if you send the patient to some hospital like Imangur or some medical college for testing, you have to take the permission from Shastro Bhavan. And
yes, I know that. If we can do something, all of us together,
exactly.
If we can clamor for it right now.
I tell you should do it. Exactly.
I think all the Foxians will agree with me.
Exactly. The problem is that if you see an NEJM study, they have found that 15% women they may be asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19.
Yes, that they are the sole source because you are not suspecting them.
Exactly, they are the more dangerous, quote unquote dangerous. Although you should not use dangerous about any patient, but the thing is that they are at high risk of transmission, and the problem is that whenever you get this infection, you may be asymptomatic, but you will carry the infection to another susceptible patient. You may carry the infection to another susceptible person in your family.
In your family, in the hospital, and the caregivers. All of us are involved.
Exactly, and the next patient you are seeing also, maybe you are transmitting infection unknowingly.
That subset of patients are at risk at that random point of time.
Exactly.
So if we can do something, my appeal to the Foxians as well as ICMR, to all, I think you will all agree with me.
Yes, 100%, Dr. Nandini. We fully
exactly.
A bit skeptical now in doing surgeries without wearing PPE.
We have done quite a few cesarean sections.
Exactly, we don't know about their status. we exactly don't know. We are just praying that the God should save us. Okay, we don't know actually what's happening. Ideally, it should be included in all the particularly when we are going to do any operation or cesarean section in patients. Ideally, the COVID-19 case should at least the antibody test should be negative. After that, we should do it ideally. And moreover, you don't know. Sometimes the patients are hiding the symptoms, and sometimes
they are suppressing facts because
exactly.
there is fear of ostracization in the society.
Exactly.
So people definitely suppress.
Exactly.
Hi Didi, how are you? Take care, webinar attend karbi. Okay guys, bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
If any questions are there, I'm requesting doctors to unmute and ask the questions. Abhishek, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, thank you. My sincere thanks to Dr. Sujoy Dasgupta as we end today's meeting and giving wonderful deliberation to us. I would like to thank all doctors for joining online experience sharing meet. Wish you and your family safe
So I
and
also
healthy
wish
life.
everybody to
Now,
stay healthy.
Yes, sir. One announcement is there from marketing team. So, please, Prachi, please.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Prachi here from Alembic Marketing. Doctor, first of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to you for giving wonderful deliberation, as well as I would like to thank all the doctors for joining this online experience sharing meeting. We are happy to share Alembic Gynae will be starting a series of international mega webinars with renowned international faculties and national faculties under the name of Knowledge Beyond Boundaries. Our first international webinar scheduled on 22nd April 3 to 4, and the topic is non-invasive therapy of managing fibroids. International eminent faculty is Dr. Lee Kin, who is the past president of Obstetrics and Gynecological Society of Singapore. Renowned national speakers are Dr. Narendra Malhotra and Dr. Manjula Anangani. Sir, and all the doctors, our team, Calcutta team, will share you registration link shortly. Requesting all the doctors to block your date for 22nd April 3 to 4 p.m. Thank you, Dr. Sujoy Dasgupta and all the doctors. Sir, you would like to add anything, Dr. Sujoy?
No, it's also thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thanks. Abhishek, I'm closing the session.